Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Today our group are going to present our book review, which is Al-Lubab, Al-Isharat wa Tanbihat by Imam Al-Fakhruddin Muhammad Razi. Before we start, let me introduce myself. My name is Muhammad Amar Ismail. Matrix number is 1223116. For the introduction, Al-Lubab, Al-Isharat wa Tanbihat, or in English, the quintessence of remarks and admonitions, is a philosophical theological work authored by Fakhruddin Muhammad bin Umar Razi. Razi is widely regarded as one of the most influential scholars of the 6th or 12th century Islamic world. His intellectual authority spans multiple disciplines, including Kalam or Ash'ari theology, philosophy or falsafah, Quranic exegesis or tafsir, and usul al-fiqh, or we call Islamic legal theory, making him a central figure in the development of post-classical Islamic thought. Now let's move on to the next slide. The Lubab, Al-Isharat wa Tanbihat is an abridgment of or we call talqis of Ibn Sina's seminal philosophical text, Al-Isharat wa Tanbihat. The edition reviewed in this presentation is the Arabic text researched and edited by Ahmad Hijazi Al-Sakha and published by Maktabat Al-Kulliyat Al-Azhariyah in Cairo, with the PDF version accessed via Wikinor. The work appears as a single volume text in Arabic. This review argues that the Lubab is not a neutral summary, but a critical intellectual engagement that employs Avicennian philosophy to construct a dialectical defense of Ash'ari theology, thereby highlighting the enduring tension between falsafah and kalam. Now I'm going to talk about the methodology used by the author for this book review. The first one is we called the formal methodology or abridgment, called talqis. The meaning of talqis, first one is a condensation of a complex text. Second one preserves core arguments, structure and logic. Third one aims to make difficult words more accessible. The second one, called Al-Razi's stated aim, to extract the lubab or essence of Ibn Sina's Al-Isharat and to clarify the arguments without judging their truth. And the last one, which is the third one, is the structural fidelity. It follows the same temnamat as the original text. Also covers logic, natural philosophy, metaphysics, psychology and theology. And last one, it maintains a recognizably Avicennian framework. Next, I will talk about the actual methodology, dialectical critique, Naqdu. The first one is the critical engagement. It is not a neutral abridgment but a systematic critique. And second one examines Ibn Sina through Ash'ari Kalam. Third one, the questions are the causality and necessity. Second one, epistemic certainty. The third one is divine attributes. And the Naqdu as a philosophical interrogation and not rejection. Second one is the call of technique of Aise, or in Arabic called Ana Akul. It's the direct insertion of Al-Razi's own arguments, marked shift from summary to evaluation, blurs line between the first one, Ibn Sina's ideas. The second one is Al-Razi's commentary. This shows confidence in debating philosophy from within its own logic. For the third methodology, for the actual methodology, dialectical critique Naqdu, it's called implicit methodology. This methodology retains Avicennian structure, redefines key concepts, reorients philosophy toward Ash'ari epistemology and metaphysics, parallels his Shah Al-Isharat, and the Lubab functions as a condensed super commentary, as well as Ibn Sina as dialectical foil for Ash'ari theology.
Concept or idea gained from this book. In the book Lubab Al-Isharat and Tanbihat is on one of the works in which he synthesized three main subtopics, which are mantikiyah, which is logic, ilahiyah, theology or metaphysics, and tabi'iyah, physics, natural science. This book is not just a compilation of knowledge, but a unifying attempt which demonstrates how reason, revelation, and observation of nature mesh with one another in arriving at truth in this way. Imam Fakhruddin Razi underlined that to achieve ma'rifatullah, the tool of thought, which is mantik, the object of study, tabi'i, and ultimate reality, ilahi, should be coordinate. Logic in the thinking of Imam Fakhruddin Razi is used as a filter through which reasoning becomes systematic, valid, and coherent. He used Aristotelian logic tools like syllogism, qiyas as the logical tools rather than as a goal to explain the revelation and comprehend the natural world. An example that can be given is the ways in which Razi used logical principle to make rational inference and associate empirical observation with theological inferences to analyze verses in the Quran about natural phenomena. In this way, logic is a means of connecting the real tabi'i and the transcendence ilahi, and his arguments are based on it when he defends a Sunni orthodoxy. Tabi'iyat in the system of Imam Fakhruddin Razi is not a value-free science but simply the science of cosmic sign, ayat kauniyah, which indicate the wisdom and power of God. He explores motion element of nature causality and human soul as a system of order in the cosmos. All the natural phenomena are treated empirically and rationally, and then reset to the spiritual and rationally, and then reset to the spiritual level. An example is fire, which is investigated with a reference to its physical characteristic, heat combustion, and which is linked to its use benefit to humanity, a reminder of hell. Therefore, tabi'iyat is the field of particular application of logic and the key to theological knowledge. Ilayat is the ultimate goal of any intellectual activity. In this case, Imam Fakhruddin Razi covers the divine attributes oneness of God, predestination and free will, angels and hereafter. He does not dogmatize this subject but addresses them by high rationally, indicatively in establishing the existence of God. Razi used the argument of motion dalil al-harakah, whose initial stage is observation of the natural world, tabi'iyah, then the logical analysis, mantiqiyah, and then theological affirmation, ilahiyah. Every ilahiyah discussion is connected to the idea of ismah, subtle signs and tanbih divine, admonition in the Quran, which is an explanation that the divine reality can be known through the signs that are hidden in the creation.
As-San'u wal-Ibda, Creation and Creativity. Conceptual meaning in Islamic philosophy. In Islamic philosophy, Al-San'u wal-Ibda refers to creation as an intentional purposeful act that originates from divine will and wisdom. Unlike Greek philosophy, which often view the universe as eternal or self-subsisting, Islamic philosophy emphasizes that all existence is created makhluk by Allah. Creativity here is not mere imitation of nature but the manifestation of divine order, nizam in the cosmos. Creation reflects God's absolute power, qudrah, and knowledge, and establish a clear creation distinction. Philosophical implication. This concept highlights the Islamic rejection of randomness and material self-sufficiency. Everything created has meaning and structure, pointing back to its creator. Human creativity, sina'ah insaniyah, is understood as limited and derivative, operating within the framework set by God. This contrasts with secular philosophical school that elevate human reason as autonomous in Islamic philosophy. Reason functions as a tool to recognize divine wisdom rather than replace it. Relation to the uniqueness of Islamic philosophical thought. The uniqueness lies in integrating metaphysics, theology, and ethics into one coherent worldview. Question is not only a metaphysical issue but also theological and moral one. Islamic philosophy forms a school of thought where creativity serves divine purpose, distinguishing it from Greek rationalism and modern materialism. The synthesis of revelation and reason define the Islamic philosophical tradition as distinct, holistic. Conceptual meaning in Islamic philosophy. Al-Qawaid refers to final purpose or end, while Mabadi', a foundation principle governing existence. Islamic philosophy asserts that everything in the universe moves toward a divinely ordained goal. Their goals are not arbitrary but grounded in divine wisdom, hikmah. Human life, knowledge, and action are oriented toward achieving moral perfection and ultimate closeness to God. Philosophical implication. This teleological view rejects the notion that existence in accident or purpose. Knowledge, ethics, and politics are all goal-oriented disciplines in Islamic philosophy. Unlike Greek teleology, which often limit purpose to natural ends, Islamic thought extends purpose to spiritual and eschatological dimension. Human reason is guided by revelation to identity, Quran, poverty, moral relativism. Relation to the uniqueness of Islamic philosophical thought. In Islamic philosophical uniquely integrate theology with divine accountability. Ends are not merely philosophical abstraction but a son wal ibda, question tied to moral responsibility and the afterlife. This makes Islamic philosophy distinct from secular system, which often detect ethics from metaphysics. The Islamic philosophical school maintains unity between belief, purpose, and action. Conceptual meaning in Islamic philosophy. At-Tajrid refers to the process of abstracting universal meaning from sensory experience. Islamic philosophers accept abstraction as a legitimate function of the intellect, akal, but they emphasize that abstract concept must remain grounded in reality and revelation. Abstraction is a means to understand higher truths, not an end in itself. Philosophical implication. This approach avoids excessive rationalism that detaches ideas from lived reality. Islamic philosophy balances empirical observation, rational abstraction, and vivid knowledge. Abstraction is used to understand metaphysical realities such as existence, wujud, unity, wahdah, and causality, while acknowledging the limit of human intellect. Relation to the uniqueness of Islamic philosophical thought. The uniqueness of Islamic philosophy lies in its controlled use of abstraction. Unlike some Greek and modern philosophical traditions that absolutists abstract reason, Islamic philosophy situates abstraction within a moral and theological framework. This produces a school of thought that values intellectual rigor without losing spiritual grounding.
Al-Bahjah wa Sa'adah, which is joy and happiness. A conceptual meaning in Islamic philosophy. Islamic philosophy views Al-Bahjah wa Sa'adah, joy and happiness, as more than only material achievement or emotional pleasure. Instead, they represent an inner emotion of fulfillment which comes from the human soul's perfection. Realizing humanity's ultimate purpose is knowing God, and following His guidance is intimately linked to happiness, which is opposed to modern secular philosophies that frequently define happiness in philosophical terms or else. B. Philosophical implications. Sufi philosophers emphasize purification or heart and connection with Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala as the highest form of joy. Al-Farabi and Ibn Sina link happiness with a growth of the rational soul through knowledge and good behavior. These schools share a metaphysical and ethical foundation that views happiness as transcending worldly existence. C. Relation to the uniqueness of Islamic philosophical thought. The uniqueness of Islamic philosophy lies in its God-centered conception of happiness. Happiness is rooted in divine purpose by combining metaphysics, ethics, and spirituality rather than being self-defined or generated by society. This represents in sharp contrast to Western philosophical traditions that place a higher value on utility, autonomy, or pleasure. Maqamat al-Arifin, spiritual station of the knowers, which is of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. A. Conceptual meaning in Islamic philosophy. The term maqamat al-arifin in Islamic philosophy refers to stable spiritual states that are acquired through moral refinement, focused effort and experiential knowledge of Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala. These stations symbolize stages of inner transformation through which the human soul ascends towards spiritual perfections. B. Philosophical implications. Although the Sufi tradition has the most developed philosophical framework for this concept, it is actually closely related to fundamental Islamic ethics and metaphysics. Sufi philosophy combines Quranic teaching on human nature, moral responsibility, and divine proximity with an understanding of existence. This approach expands the scope of philosophy beyond rational speculation and recognizes spiritual experience as the legitimate and essential source of knowledge. C. Relation to the uniqueness of Islamic philosophical thought. This can be seen that true knowledge must lead to moral and spiritual development. Islamic philosophy assesses knowledge according to its ability to purify the soul and bring a person closer to Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala, which is in contrast to philosophical traditions that keep epistemology and ethics apart. Next, Asrar al-Ayat, the inner secrets of Quranic verses. A. Conceptual meaning in Islamic philosophy. According to Islamic philosophy, the Quran has several levels of meaning, from the obvious literal interpretation to deeper spiritual and physical understandings. As a result, understanding revelation is both an intellectual and spiritual endeavor and reflects the diversity of truth itself. B. Philosophical implications. Within the Islamic philosophical framework, the exploration of the deeper meanings of the Quran is based on the balance between revelation, reason, and spiritual intuition. Revelation is the ultimate source of truth, reason functions as a tool for interpretation and contemplation, and spiritual insight allows for a better understanding of divine knowledge. This epistemological framework avoids unstructured knowledge that is detached from spiritual foundations and distinguishes Islamic philosophy from rationalist traditions that elevate human intellect as the ultimate authority. C. Relation to the uniqueness of Islamic philosophical thought. Reasons need to be guided by revelation and refined through spiritual discipline. In order to ensure that intellectual inquiry serves the broader aim of human perfection and divine present, philosophy maintains a strong connection to sacred texts and ethical purposes.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. For this presentation, I will discuss a critique that assesses the extent to which the author's argument successfully supports the view presented, as well as any limitations that can be identified. In books, Lubab Al-Isharat shows Razi's efforts to critically and deeply evaluate Ibn Sina's philosophy. However, his approach has several weaknesses because Razi often mixes Ibn Sina's original explanations with his own Ash'ari theological views, and Razi's criticisms, especially for students who do not have strong background in Islamic philosophy. So in some metaphysical issues, such as the relationship of cause and effect and divine knowledge, Al-Razi is seen to prioritize conformity with faith over the consistency of philosophical arguments. Although this approach can be understood from a religious perspective, it remains a truly objective evaluation of philosophy. However, the importance of Lubab Al-Isharat is not effects because this work reflects an important development in the history of Islamic thought when theology began to use philosophical methods. Critically without abandoning the principles of faith.
The first opinion, advantage and limitation of Lubab Al-Isharat. As students, we see both strengths and challenges in Lubab Al-Isharat. On the positive side, this work shows how Muslim thinkers engage critically with Greek influence philosophy while still upholding Islamic principles. For example, Al-Razi's critiques demonstrate that Islamic theology was not passive but actively participated in rational debate. This challenged the common assumption that philosophy and theology were always in conflict within Islam. However, the text is quite complex. Newcomers might struggle to understand the philosophical discussions without guidance or access to Ibn Sina's original work, Al-Isharat. So, while it is intellectually rich, it can also be challenging for students to approach. So, number 2 is significance for students of Islamic studies. The real importance of Lubab Al-Isharat lies in how it bridges falsafa or philosophy and kalam or theology. Al-Razi's critique should not be seen as flaws, but rather as evidence of the vibrant diversity within Islamic intellectual history. This work shows that differences of opinion and spirited debate were central to scholarly pursuits. For students of Islamic studies, it is particularly valuable because it demonstrates how rational investigation was used to support faith rather than oppose it. Understanding this text helps us see that philosophy and theology were interconnected and that scholars continually evaluated philosophical ideas against Islamic doctrines.
For the conclusion, what can we conclude is Lubab Al-Isharat wa Tanbihat is a masterful and intellectually sophisticated work that transcends the boundaries of a conventional abridgment. Authored by Fakhr Razi, the text preserves the formal structure of Ibn Sina's Al-Isharat while transforming it into a site of rigorous philosophical theological critique. Far from being a neutral summary, the Lubab functions as a dialectical monument to the engagement between reason aklu and revelation naklu in the Islamic intellectual tradition. By employing the tools of Avicenna philosophy to challenge its own metaphysical assumptions, Razi models a mature and critical scholarly method. For contemporary readers, the work remains highly relevant, offering not merely historical insight but a powerful example of how intellectual traditions can engage internal diversity through disciplined reasoning, respectful disagreement, and a profound commitment to truth. I think that's all from our group for this book review. Thank you very much for watching.